Hi, it's Tash. Welcome to Tash's Library. Today's video is going to be my May wrap-up, which is a little late, but better late than never. Now, in May, I did finish my entire TBR bar one book, and that was Harrow the Ninth by Tamsin Muir, which is the second book in the series. Now, I have started this, so as you can see, I have read about a third of it, but I haven't finished it. So a little bit of a fail, but still, I will finish it. I have carried this on into June, but I haven't read it yet. Now, I have found this one just very obtuse, and I'm just not into it as much as I was the first book. So it's taking me a bit longer and a little bit more motivation to push myself to read it. So yeah, let me know if you think it gets significantly better after the first third. Let me know, because that might give me the push I need to finish this book. The books I did read, I first read Time is the Fire, the best of Connie Willis, and this was for the prompt Light Source in the title. This is brilliant. I love Connie Willis. If anyone's watched any of my videos, she was a recent find from last year, and I just love it. Now, this book includes 10 short stories of varying lengths, and they all have won some form of award. There's a great mix of chilling, poignant, sad, funny, and wacky stories. They are very, very well crafted with very commonplace situations. And then Connie Willis is an expert at pulling the rug out from under you just as you're starting to feel comfortable in a story. My favorites were Firewatch, which is in the world of the Oxford time travel series, where we follow Bartholomew at St. Paul's Cathedral. I also really enjoyed All Seated on the Ground, which is a funny first contact story with Christmas carols and aliens who stare disapprovingly. And The Soul Selects Her Own Society was a fabulous story as well, an hilarious essay on two newly discovered Emily Dickinson poems. I know that sounds wacky, but it was so funny and so enjoyable to read. There were none I disliked, but my least favorites were The Last of the Winnebagos, which is a sort of poignant dystopian story about the extinction of pets. I'm not a great fan of dystopian, so that's probably why it wasn't my favorite. And even The Queen, I didn't love. It's a bit of a feminist story about menstruation that didn't appeal to me that much. But I would highly recommend this book to any lovers of science fiction short stories. If you haven't read Connie Willis short stories, do so. Also, if you're participating in our fantasy bingo, this is a great book for the prompt short stories because it's an entire anthology. It would meet hard mode. I then read A Drop of Corruption by Robert Jackson Bennett, which is for the prompt Plant on the Cover. This is the sequel to The Tainted Cup, which I adored last year. And once again, I adored this book, possibly even more than the first, by a little bit, because they're both awesome. So in this one, it's almost like a standalone again, though I would still recommend reading the first book for a bit of context. But we follow investigators Dinius Cole and Anna Delobra, who return to investigate a locked room murder mystery of a Treasury employee on the very borders of the Empire. This is superb. The mystery is intriguing. It is so well constructed. A really great balance between fantasy and mystery. Great biopunk world with bodily modifications to enhance senses, memory, and strength. Very intricate politics, high stakes, evocative world building, a very relatable narrator, fabulous supporting characters, and it explores themes of power and duty and imperialism. This is a superb series so far. So if you haven't read it, go for it, particularly if you like fantasy mystery blends. If you're also participating in bingo, it does fulfill hard mode for biopunk and not hard mode for published in 2025. but also book in parts for hard mode, because it's got at least 4 parts. Then I read I, Robot by Isaac Asimov for the prompt pronoun in the title. And this explores the intricacies and possible loopholes in the laws of robotics. It is a 1940s futurism where we have sort of almost like short stories that are kind of meshed together through the framework of a robot specialist being interviewed. And then she goes through and gives these narratives of these disparate robots. So we follow, for example, Robbie, who's a nursemaid robot, Speedy, the mining robot, QT1, and Dave, which are robots on space stations and asteroids. We have a mind-reading Herbie, a robot that gets lost, the Brain, who builds a hyperspace ship. And we also have a politician who's running for mayor who is accused of being a humanoid robot. And it's just so fun, this book. The framing narrative works really, really well because you sort of do get these different stories, but they all just fit together so beautifully. A great examination of morality and ethics, humanity, fear, the 3 laws of robotics. I really enjoyed some recurring characters that came in, Powell and Donovan in particular. They're very, very funny, constantly finding themselves in troublesome situations with great banter. And this is ultimately a very engaging book with a very accessible writing style, great use of logic. So yes, highly recommended to any lovers of classic science fiction. For transport on the cover as a prompt, I read The Murder of Mr. Ma, and this follows Lao Shay, an academic who meets Mr. D and becomes involved in the investigation of the murder of a Chinese shopkeeper. This is set in 1920s London and is inspired by Sherlock Holmes and John Watson. I really enjoyed the examination of prejudice in this, of Chinese culture and the Chinese immigrant experience in the early 20th century. I think that was superbly done. It's also got a great portrayal of post-World War I PTSD. And very quick, enjoyable read with very cool fight scenes. What brought it down a little bit for me, though, was the writing style wasn't particularly immersive, felt a little stilted at times. And it is a very simple murder mystery. So if you're looking for a murder mystery that really keeps you riveted and wondering who done it, this is not it. This is not it at all. It's pretty much just one event after another without any real rhyme or reason for the investigation. There's also a particular costume that one of the characters uses at times that doesn't seem to really make sense and almost borders on the ridiculous at times. So I didn't love that component of it. I also found the resolution a little bit unsatisfying. But if you enjoy mysteries in historical settings, give it a go. Then I read Silver Nitrates by one of my favorite authors, Silvia Moreno Garcia. And this was actually for the Buzzwordathon cover prompt for May, which was eyes on the cover. And this follows Montserrat, a sound editor in 1990s Mexico City, and she is a horror film enthusiast. When her friend Tristan introduces her to a cult horror film director, she's drawn into the mystery of an uncompleted, supposedly cursed film that was written by a Nazi occultist. So super wacky, right? I loved the writing of this. I mean, I love Moreno Garcia's writing anyway, but this was just so beautifully written, so immersive. Very interesting discussion of filmography as well. And if you like film history and the intricacies of filmmaking, it's got really cool details in this. If you don't like those things, maybe you're going to find those parts a bit dry. I love them. Very atmospheric descriptions of 1990s Mexico City. Very intriguing mystery as well. This is ultimately a bit of a mystery story, and the evidence is gradually brought to light in a very interesting way. There are some horror moments sprinkled in, but this is not really the focus. So even though it's sort of a horror story, It's not for those who get terribly terrified in horror books, because I don't love horror and I loved this. I think there's like a few scary moments, but they're not jump scary. They're not super creepy. They're just like, oh, okay, there's a horror element there. It explores themes of power and fame, vanity, and the desire for immortality. I feel that this is a superb book. This is one of my favorite Moreno Garcia's. I think it probably is my favorite Moreno Garcia to date. But if you are looking for a typical horror novel, this may not be for you, because it's more mystery, less horror. But I would recommend this to any lovers of beautiful writing, slow burn mysteries with elements of horror. And complete reversal of genre here, I read the Ornithologist Field Guide to Love. And this was for the prompt profession in the title. It also fulfilled the buzzwordathon title prompt, which was using the words to or two. This follows Beth Pickering, who's an Oxford University-based ornithologist specializing in thaumaturgic birds. She's also a woman fighting for true recognition from her male peers. So when a competition is announced to seek out a rare bird, she obviously needs to win, because tenure's on the offer, reputation is on the offer, but she needs to outcompete her male colleagues, especially the oh so handsome and, despite having studied at Yale, quite capable Devon Lockley. What I loved about this was the funny cutthroat academia. This was great. It was good fun. One of the quotes I loved was, "There's no space for loyalty or friendship when it comes to ornithology." And that pretty much sums up all the capers in this book. There's great play of words as well, a lot of puns happening. There are lethal birds, irate French fishermen, very strong mockery of the one bed trope. It does explore some themes as well of reputation, proving oneself, love, and there's a lot of traipsing around the English countryside, making it a very fun read. However, I didn't love the amount of romance in this. There were just constant lustful thoughts. And I don't think people have constant lustful thoughts, particularly when they're actually at work. But anyway, I mean, that's my experience. Maybe others are different. But I felt that this completely overshadowed the plot and the description of the wonderful magical birds. I wanted more birds. I really did. I wanted to know more about the biology of these birds, and we didn't quite get that. The plot is also quite thin. The characters are very cardboard cutouts. But if you're looking for a funny romance book with a slight touch of fantasy, highly recommended for that. It is a fun read. And if you are doing bingo, it would fulfill the prompt cozy SFF. I then veered from my TBR slightly and read Watermoon by Samantha Soto Yambao. This follows Hannah and her father, who run a pawn shop. Now, this is a magical pawn shop that deals with regrets, not actual objects. And when her father disappears in mysterious circumstances, Hannah has to begin this quest to find him, along with a stranger, Kishin, who happens by this pawn shop that morning. Now, what I loved about this book was the world that was created. This was so imaginative, so dreamlike and wonderful, and completely impossible and weird and cool. The world building is top notch. Very creative premise as well. And it does follow themes of things like choices and fate versus free will. I adored the first 20% of this book. I found it very captivating and endearing, and was looking at it as a potential 5-star. However, I didn't like the rest of the book. And I think that's personal to me. I found it a little bit overly moralistic at times. It seemed to have just all these sayings kind of put together in the dialogue. The dialogue to me was not very realistic and kind of gave this feel of self-help and kind of the positivity movement, which I'm not a fan of. I also really didn't like the romance that came into this. I felt that neither character was really believable. The romance was unbelievable, and I didn't quite gel with Caishin's particular choices. He is a physicist and he makes very stupid choices. Yes, there is insta love. I hate insta love. If you love insta love, you might like this. But yes, I just felt that he never really truly questioned his experiences, which to me just didn't feel real for a scientist. There's also became a bit of a sequence of events without any plot, I felt. But, you know, if you love cozy romance, strong elements of positive thinking, morality, and insta-love and romance, and you want just kind of a fun, kind of almost magical realism read, then this could be the book for you. And if you're doing bingo, this fits hard mode for Impossible Places and also for book in parts. Then I read The Druid of Shannara by Terry Brooks. And this was, for the prompt, a book on my TBR for a long time. This is the second book in the 4-book series that follows the Sword of Shannara trilogy. We follow Walkerpa and Ren, who are given tasks by a druid. So we're seeking particular magical objects. Now, I have loved Shannara so far, and this has a very cozy, traditional fantasy feel, very immersive writing. I really like Terry Brooks's writing, great characters, they're just very traditional fantasy characters, which make me feel really comforted and joyful. Immense world building and journey quest. There's a journey quest, which is my all-time favorite fantasy trope. It also explores themes of destiny and knowledge and good versus evil. So to me, this was just a brilliant read. And possibly the only thing that would bring it down slightly was a little bit slow paced. It was far more slowly paced than the other books, but the end was just captivating and fascinating and just super action packed. I'd recommend this to lovers of old school traditional fantasy. And if you're doing bingo, it fulfills elves and dwarves, but not for hard mode. Then I read Faithbreaker by Hannah Kaner for an autumnal cover prompt. And this was the final book in the trilogy that starts with Godkiller. It's the Fallen Gods trilogy. And this is set in a world in which gods and their worship are banned. So we mainly follow a god killer, a mercenary with a good track record for killing gods, until she meets a god she cannot kill for various reasons. Now, as the story progresses across the trilogy, it really expands in the number of point of view characters and just becomes more and more epic. I preferred the first book still. I loved the first book because it had real Witcher vibes. It had a journey quest, and I love those things. They are my jam. And so I felt that this second book in particular, and a little bit of the third book, just kind of felt like it was missing those Witcher vibes for me. But there's just so much that's good about this series and this book in particular. There's a very cute little companion kind of god who is a wonderful, wonderful character. Kissin the God Killer is a very strong main female character with a disability. She's just got an incredibly well-developed personality in the story and great backstory. The action is exciting. The world building is top-notch. Very good representation of disability and sexuality. It explores gods and politics and loyalty and love, sacrifice, integrity, and finding one's place in the world. As I said, not quite as good as the first book, but significantly better than the second book, and a very fitting end to a great trilogy. I'd highly recommend this to those looking for modern epic fantasy with great characters. And if you're doing bingo, this would fit gods and pantheons, but I don't believe it'd be hard mode because it's just one pantheon, I believe. Let me know if you don't agree. Also last in a series, but not hard mode, of course, because it's only 3 books. Also published in 2025, not hard mode because it's not a debut, but it does fulfill hard mode for an LGBTQIA protagonist. But then I veered again for my TBR, and now you can see why I didn't finish Harrow the Ninth. But yeah, I had to do it sometimes. So I read The Murder of Roger Ackroyd by Agatha Christie, and this is a Hercule Poirot locked room mystery set in a small English village. And this was just superb fun. Once again, just Agatha Christie, a great entertaining mystery, interesting characters, and there's a very interesting plot mechanic that is used in this book that probably has become a staple in mystery novels, but would have been quite groundbreaking at the time. Now, this isn't a favorite book. It's not going to be my all-time favorite book, but I really, really enjoyed reading it and would highly recommend it to those lovers of mystery stories, those wanting to explore the history of the genre. And finally, I read Queen of Sorcery by David Eddings, which fulfilled the prompt royalty in the title. And this is the second book in the Belgariad series, in which a boy is pulled into an epic journey when a powerful object is stolen. Once again, this kind of ticked my boxes because it's got an epic journey quest, which is my all-time favorites. It's got traditional fantasy characters, which are my feel-good, cozy space. Cool world building, explores themes of coming of age, the hero's journey, destiny, good versus evil, all the things I love. You may not love them. I love them. And the only thing I disliked about this one is there were certain creatures featuring in this book which I could have done without. I found them a bit repulsive, but that's once again very personal to me. I also found it a little bit slower than the first book and fairly predictable in its plot, but ultimately just a fun read and highly recommended to lovers of traditional epic fantasy. And if you're doing bingo, it is published in the 1980s, although it doesn't fulfill hard mode. And finally, I read my 3 short stories that I picked. The first one was Beyond Lies the Wub by Philip K. Dick. This explores a spaceship that picks up a sentient pig-like creature as part of their supplies. So it does raise issues of things like food ethics. I really enjoyed the ideas in this and really just enjoyed the story as well. Once again, I'm not going to give a lot of detail on these short stories because they are short. The snowball effect involved the mathematics of organizational growth, which is a bit of a sociology experiment. It was really interesting, and I would kind of give this like a mid rating for both ideas and enjoyment. I didn't love it as much as Beyond Lies the Wub. And finally, I read Day Million, which is an absurd examination of sex and gender. The ideas in this were 4-star enjoyment, about a 3, but definitely worth checking out. And that is it. That's what I read. I'm pretty proud of what I read. I mean, I would have loved to have read Harrow the Ninth, but still, I feel that this is the first book I haven't completed on a TBR this year so far. And so that's pretty good. And I will plan to continue chipping away at it to make sure I do finish it in the next couple months. Anyway, let me know what your favorite book of May was. And until I see you next time, take care.